Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show. Happy to have you here, and I would love it if you would subscribe to the show. Now, the other thing that I would like you to be aware of is that Keys to the Shop, as a podcast, of course, you're listening to it right now, but it's also a consulting and coaching company. That means that I work one-on-one with operators and owners of coffee shops to help them improve their culture, their people, the quality, the operations of the business. And that means if you're opening a coffee shop for the first time, I work with lots of folks that do that. If you've got a long-established coffee shop, but you need somebody to come in alongside of you and help you assess and go into the next phase of your business with a lot of clarity, maybe some solutions that need to be applied or created for issues that are coming up. These are things that I work on all the time with my clients, and I'd be happy to talk with you about what you need right now in your business. So go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. And I look forward to talking with you. And one thing about today's episode, we are sponsored. We've had sponsors on the show forever. But there are two sponsors that we want to talk about later on in the episode. And that, first of all, is Arto Brick. You can find them at Arto Brick on Instagram. And then there's also the Pacific Barista series, that line of plant-based performance beverages that we all know and love. But I want to jump into it today because it's just you and I today talking about quality control. And one of the things we do actually emphasize quite often in the cafe is hospitality. This show, Keys to the Shop, feels that, not to use the name of the show, but one of the keys to the shop is hospitality. In fact, we just had an episode called Start with Hospitality, because that's going to get you to quality. Now, when you get to quality, what do? What is it that you have to achieve in the drinks, in the product that you make? And how do you go about doing that? Well, today we're going to talk about principles that I believe will lead you to a better place. It'll improve the condition of your quality control, and maybe even for some of you, start to give you a little bit of control to begin with. Because for, I would say, a good deal of coffee shops start with prescribed recipes, standards that have been sort of assembled from elsewhere, and they're let to sort of coast. And we only ever address quality when things veer outside of quality, when things become low quality or not even considered a quality beverage, something that's not pleasant. I think that's a definition that we need to figure out, actually, before we even start. What is quality, and what are you trying to achieve by trying to control it? Well, quality control might just be better stated as the ability to maintain and deliver implied or explicit promises of experiences through a product. That is quality control. Quality, the quality of a beverage, is certain desirable traits. I would say quality is not in certain sense of the qualities of something like, oh, that is thick or thin or hot or cold. Those are qualities. A cold beverage could be low quality and have the quality of being cold, you see. So we have to start with the idea that when we're talking about quality in this conversation, it's about a perception of value and a consistency of that experience over time, such that it was not only worth the investment that they pay, the money and the time, but it's something that they feel is integral in their life, in a sense. Like, it's not a bargain that people make in their head, really, like explicitly, like this will become a part of my life. But it subconsciously, we seek out this experience because it has moved from a transactional exchange to a trusted relationship. That's what a lot of brands are built on. We start, though, with the "we'll see if this is good" conversation. We'll see if my cold beverage is not, we'll see if it's cold, we'll see if it's a quality beverage. It will see if it's of high quality, right? So this is how we're talking about it today. Now, I've said this before on the show, and I am not trying to be harsh, but we in the coffee industry, I would say, let's just say the specialty coffee industry, have an issue with optics where we are really good at projecting quality, but not good at delivering it. We're good at projecting excellence and we talk about it, but we often will let a customer down for myriad reasons. But a lot of it boils down to a lack of attention on the actual quality of the beverage being put out, and a reliance upon the grace of the customer to forgive the lack of consistency. Is that we're only human and just all this stuff we kind of rely on. And why this is the case is myriad reasons why you could actually have inconsistency on the bar, but a lot of it comes down to not having a system of quality control. And maybe in today's conversation around coffee out on the internet and in circles of coffee, the emphasis on hospitality is a good thing, but let's not so focus on one thing that we don't include the quality of our drinks as a part of hospitality. And like I said in the beginning, if we start with hospitality and we deliver that quality experience, then the quality of the product also needs to be there. But it's not something that you can just set and forget. You can't simply trust that the coffee is going to taste good day after day. That's what gets us in trouble. That's what lets us outsource our critical thinking abilities to brands that promise consistency. They say, you'll always get a good shot of espresso with our brand of coffee. Well, that's not true because I can pull you terrible shots of coffee or espresso from any coffee you give me, any coffee. And the same goes for hot chocolates or spritzers or fill in the blank bagel sandwiches. It doesn't matter. Everything has a potential that is needing to be maintained by the company. And so the first step in having quality control in the cafe is knowing that without keeping your hands on the wheel of quality, things will go off the rails. They will go off because you have to be there guiding it. Maybe rails is not the right thing. They'll go off the road, right? So with quality control, if you're already running a coffee shop right now, for example, and you don't have much of a program, this is something you're going to need to institute. Past episodes have talked about retraining your baristas on new standards. It might take longer for you in this case because there's a lot of history and muscle memory, all of this stuff, right? If you're new and you're just setting up your coffee bar for the first time, you're going to be able to set up, hopefully, an institution of quality control in your cafe that is, first of all, a mindset that you return to, a place in your culture and in your speech and in the meeting. It's not a substantive, it's not a substance place, like it's not a place, but it's an area of focus that is a pillar of what makes your place a good place. And it needs to have that carved out in yours and other people's minds, everyone's minds, but a lot of the leaders first. Now, what you put in there, once you do have that area of quality control carved out, which is to say, it is a concern of yours that is worth investing time, money, energy, and people's attention, including your own, to. And that includes food and drink. This is what we serve. We serve food and drink. We're going to keep it there today. I'm not going to talk about how you hang your t-shirts in the merch section or whether or not you're making inventory, FIFOing your inventory for coffee beans on the shelf. There's a lot of principles for quality control around how you care for the shop. And I think, think about that episode, that shift break episode I think we did where it was talking about shopkeeping, keeping shop. That is a key one to listen to. But when it comes to some thing that needs to be prepared in the moment, quality control is what we're going to talk about, how to do that. And specifically around coffee. Here's the thing. A lot of us are serving bad coffee. I've said this for a long time, and I'm now seeing it on other larger platforms and magazines, online magazines. Home espresso enthusiasts are making the best coffee in the world. There's no way you're getting the best coffee you've ever had in your life in in a coffee shop, in a busy coffee shop, versus if you had the choice to get it from a friend who has a cool home espresso setup. Our friend Andrew Sinclair over at Mad Lab had this whole rant on Instagram about this, why he has one group espresso machines in his new cafe and may do it in all of his cafes, because he knows that machine manufacturers are making single and prosumer machines, or just these single group professional or quality commercial machines, to a higher spec of quality than the larger 2, 3, and 4 group espresso machines. And the reason why is because the crowd that buys those machines is a lot more likely to complain. I thought that was an interesting point. And frankly, it kind of rings true. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the ability for you to get a great espresso from a cafe, from a busy cafe, is there's a higher potential because the coffee beans themselves, the roasted coffee, the quality and consistency, let's just say at a general level, is higher today than it was when I started in coffee in like 1999. Okay. That I think that's somewhat objectively true. Now, if you love the coffee you drink, then who am I to say that it's bad, good? We're not going to get into that. But the point is that today, I think we have so much faith in the technology and in the product that we rule ourselves out as the person who can coax the best from it. Roasters aren't so much under this illusion that they aren't part of that equation of rendering the potential. They are a key part of bringing forth the potential of a particular green product. And it's not one person's not the hero in this story, but we do have to get back to emphasizing in a major way the effect that a barista has on the coffee itself, rather than saying, well, I purchased the best equipment, and then all of a sudden we wonder why our coffee is not being raved about because we're paying so much for it. But the baristas are just pushing buttons, and we're telling them that's what they should do. They're not engaged in the process of quality control because we're not training them to be in the process of dialing in the coffee. Even I'm skeptical of the sync thing that's going on with between Malkunik and La Marzocco. Love La Marzocco, love Malkunik. I recommend these machines all the time. But to say we're getting to this place where, again, there's a downward trend in total potential that a coffee can reach. So we're elevating the potential of coffee and roasting. And if you're one of these people, by the way, that buys a roaster that is basically like a giant vending machine of green coffee that turns it brown, these super automatic type of coffee roasters, you're not really doing the world of coffee any favors if you're not really hyper involved in, even with that machine, dialing it in as much as you can, which is limited. So you might as well have bought a different roaster, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. The quality control is a part of a larger issue of how we have not really included ourselves as being culpable and a factor in the quality of the coffee coming out of our bars. Even in with leadership says, it's these baristas, they're not engaged, they're not pulling good shots. We have a recipe and we have to follow that recipe. But even the recipe is not a fail safe for having a good shot of espresso. And the human factor is a huge part of what we're kind of leaving on the table. So quality control needs to have, and the next step here is a good training program and ongoing training and maintenance of human skill in the cafe. Human skill in that we talked about this, where you bring somebody on, you onboard them, you train them to do what the customer is going to order very well. That's the principle of training people very well, is to help them become successful in making the menu and serving people well while they make the menu. And then the tools that they use to do that is what quality control is, right? It is, yes, you have to have recipes. You've got to have, within the recipe, you've got to actually have a range of acceptable numbers. So we give sometimes these numbers in recipes that says, well, the espresso should be like, if we do like a 1-to-2 ratio of espresso. If I put 18 grams of coffee into the portafilter and I want 38 to 40 grams out, liquid, grams, and I want it within this number of seconds. These are things that are fine because they have ranges. But if you say it has to come out of the portafilter exactly 37 grams or 38 grams or exactly 28 seconds and in this exact volume, then you're going to freak out an entire group of baristas that will seek to offload the blame to equipment because they know they're not going to hit that every time. You're going to go through a ton of product. Those baristas are going to throw out tons of shots. Your cost of goods is going to just skyrocket. So we've got to have acceptable ranges that we have intentionally developed with our coffee and train people to recognize how to use those ranges of acceptable parameters for espresso and for coffee. Coffee, you should have a staff that has been trained well enough and you have studied your own coffee and equipment and its acceptable range well enough to allow them to adjust the grind on your bulk grinder based on either the age of the coffee off the roaster or the type of coffee. And you engage your staff in the process of investigating the output and flavors of these things at the same time so that everybody is dialed in mentally to the process. You've dialed yourself into developing a process where people can actually affect these coffees, through these recipes, through these standard operating procedures that you've developed for how to brew a good cup of coffee, even on a batch brewer. Don't just like throw coffee in there at this weight and it should taste good. Don't worry about it. And if it doesn't, just let me know. That's another way of saying, trust the recipe. Don't think about the coffee. And how are we supposed to have baristas that are engaged in a cafe where we desperately need staff who are engaged in the process to be of value to the customer, to render good cups of coffee every time, rather than saying, well, it's been pulling funny all day and we've been serving these shots all day. We didn't know what to do. And you get frustrated, but what has been the refrain every time there's been a problem before is just let the manager know, just let me know, rather than even after a year, developing some kind of a contingency plan. Like, how do we troubleshoot espresso? So you start with a recipe. You say, here are the ranges of acceptable parameters, and here's when to use them. If I say the range is, okay, I want to see a drop from the portafilter within 8 seconds of the shot. We want to see a certain weight of coffee out total within a time frame. Maybe you want to use volume, but it's multivariate, right? When you start to see this parameter change where you reach that point of, yes, you've got that 38 grams, that 40 grams of espresso out, total liquid weight measured, but it happened within a really quick time frame. You have to try to stay in the center of our parameters, not on the edges, the too quick or the too slow. You've got to teach people and give them teach them to be comfortable and confident to actually adjust the grinder on their shift while they're working. This is how we control quality. Quality control is not just, here's the recipe that we should be doing, but here's none of the tools or training to keep it on there. This is a training issue, quality control, as much as it is having tools to do so. So obviously espresso is one of the first places that we have to think about quality control because it's one of the most finicky. It is one of the most difficult it's easy now. It's easy today to get a shot of espresso to be within a particular parameter because we've got equipment now that does a lot of counting and measuring, and there's some good uses. Okay, there is some good uses of these automations that machines have in them, and I do think that there's a difference between that and a super automatic espresso machine. That's a story for another day. If you ever want to read any rants on LinkedIn or catch me on a live stream, I'll be a little bit more candid about that. But all that said, it's the dialing in and keeping it on point throughout the day that is the really difficult part. Okay, so with espresso, we do need those recipes. We need acceptable ranges. We need to train people to aim small, miss small. Go for the center of it. If you're saying 26 seconds to 30 seconds and it was at 26 seconds, then you know if everything else was equal, then you have some issues and that you need to get closer to center. Could you serve that shot? You can probably serve that shot, okay? But it should ring something in your mind should be triggered to say, I should just go a tiny bit finer. The grinder burrs are heating up just a bit on this machine. The oils that hold the puck of espresso together to resist the water flow and to give me a little bit longer dwell time in the coffee so I can extract the good stuff. It's not there as much because it got quote unquote burned off in the within the burrs. And so the heat is actually an issue that I should be aware of as a espresso craftsperson. This is what baristas do. They make drinks and they need to be able to keep those drinks in their quality consistent throughout the day. This is just another vote in favor of sort of diving into resourcing staff with tools and knowledge and attention and compensation for their skills that they are taking on to engage in the process throughout the day. I would pay a barista way more money for being the kind of barista that does just focus in on the quality control of the espresso throughout the day, because what they're doing is they're actually taking that product, making sure it's excellent throughout the day so that every customer gets the higher potential product, like the higher potential of the flavor is realized in that product. We need as many edges as possible. We need as many advantages as possible today to communicate value. And we can easily start to erode trust from the customer when we start to accept, because of a lack of quality control, this inconsistency and this downward path of it's good enough, it's good enough, it's good enough. And so this is something that will, I think, make a difference, especially when we're talking about, as we consider the cost of goods even before tariffs were a thing, and after tariffs, we'll see how this is all going to shake out. Is customers are going to be much more sensitive to the value they're getting from the coffee they purchase, and therefore reinvesting back into the human element of this. Fair and generous compensation for highly resourced and trained individuals who are the craftspeople behind the machine to dial in and do this quality control is part of it. So anyway, the whole point here is that quality control, practically speaking, with espressos right now, is something that needs to have defined parameters and points at which, if you observe them, will trigger particular actions that you have prescribed. If this, then that. That's what troubleshooting is. That should be a huge part of the way the training manual, but it's not. It doesn't just live in the manual. It has to actually be part of a performance evaluation of staff. If you're having trouble dialing in the coffee, if you're not really great at doing that throughout the day, and it's been a long time since you've been employed, one of two things is happening. You're either not really getting trained very well, or if you have been trained well, but you're just not getting it, this might not be the job for you. And the reason why is because the job is actually to make coffee in a hospitable environment, to provide that service, which I completely think is a huge, it's equal and if not more so important than the coffee. if you wanted to, you know, choose one, I guess, but that's just not here or there. But the point is how we get graded, and we accept grading, by the way, and merit. We accept these things in competitions. Obviously, we should accept it within the cafe. Those standards of performance can't just be that you bring the good vibes. You you have to bring the good coffee too. And leaders, it's your job to set people up for success as to how that's going to happen every single day, even if it's the afternoon, the morning, the after, the shift is changing. This is the game. This is how coffee shops need to be using their energy and time and resource. And this starts with especially the espresso. Now, milk is the same way. Quality control for milk has to do with troubleshooting guides. It has to do with the particular kind of milk that you have. If you have a particular dairy that you're using, you should know the qualities of that milk in order to know how to create a quality beverage out of it. That is ultimately how you quality control anything. Here are the qualities of this product, and here's how we create from that what we consider a quality beverage, the milk that is this glassy shine to it, the microfoam and white chrome, and whatever else you want to say, wet paint. So there is a really hockey stick curve of learning curve happening with milk. When I do trainings, I always encourage people, start with the hard thing, and you'll have more time for that person to engage in the process of letting that skill become second nature. We save sometimes the most difficult things to last because we feel like we need to put people through a gauntlet of just a ton of minutia and small stuff to prove their character. But I really think we're shooting ourselves in the foot like that. Start them with the hard things. You don't have to put them on a busy shift necessarily, but you need to get them going, learning this stuff, because it actually takes a long time. Milk tends to be one of those things that takes a long time for somebody to master. When you're steaming it traditionally on a traditional steam wand, and not doing one of these milk juggler things, or Latte Art Factory and the other places that have like these automated systems, which I'm sure have their uses. But if you don't want to pay in an arm and a leg for something like that, then this is something that we also need to focus on in our training, and is completely achievable to create a very good milk beverage across a larger staff if you are focused on training people. And there is a certain level of professional pride gained when you are able to, with your hands, create a drink for a person and hundreds of people throughout the shift. And I think it's worth hanging on to the handmade aspect of coffee, and doing things by hand is it creates this virtuous cycle of investment, engagement, pride in work, connection with the customer, crafting for a person that basically babysitting large machines doesn't quite do. Okay. I'm going to discipline myself to veer away from this now, get back to the milk, Chris. We're not going to get into the rant, but milk quality control is just this. It's the same. It's that you don't have to dial in the milk, so to speak. You do, though, have to get your baristas to understand that the quality of the drink itself is dependent on the quality of the energy you give to that particular drink. So quality control with espresso, whereas it relies on a lot of contingencies, identifying particular attributes of the coffee that tell you it's good or bad, or maybe getting closer to bad than good, and giving people the confidence and permission to adjust these things. With milk, it isn't so much the case, because we largely have homogenized gallons and half gallons of milk. And really what's happening is we have to just adhere to the particular way of steaming milk that leads to a great result. Either it's custom for a type of beverage that has more or less foam. The variations of what your cafe offers needs to have a prescribed methodology. So if you tell your customers yes, dry foam, then your baristas should know how to make dry foam according to your company's standards for that. That is where you start with quality control, and then you are going to have people get trained on that. Are you confident that your baristas are able to dial in and steam milk in various different ways with across 2% or skim and oat and almond and all these other ones that you might offer? The verification of skill level and adherence to standards and achieving those standards consistently, that is a ongoing training initiative that is such a huge part of quality control in the coffee shop. Procuring the best ingredients, of course, that's part of it. Procuring and maintaining the freshness of those ingredients, that's a part of it too. So you don't want to have milk. I've done this, had this happen many times. With skim milk, this happens where, oh, somebody forgot to first in, first out, or FIFO the milk. So now I'm steaming some skim milk because we're in a rush, and then it starts to create cheese in the pitcher. So we look at the date. Oh, it's spoiled milk. Oh, we caught it just in time, right? How could you not catch it? You're delivering a lumpy drink. But that was a quality control issue. It started with receiving product that was not within a spec that should have been a company standard. We want milk to not have the expiration date of the next day, for example, that we get it. Maybe it's like 3-4 weeks out for half and half and heavy cream and higher fat content products. Maybe it's different with your whole and, Lord knows the indefinite shelf life of shelf stable plant-based milks. But once open, for example, do you have a quality control system where you have not only first in, first out in the fridge, but have you labeled your fridge to know where these things go, and that everyone knows this is the lower, right hand or upper left hand side where the one oat milk that we're using is actually there. It lives there. That's the mise en place, is quality control when it comes to product. So we're never just opening random things only to find there's like 4 open oat milks, and we're like, I don't know which one to use. Who's opening these oat milks? We're like M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, and people are leaving water glasses everywhere, and it's just oat milks everywhere. That's a quality control issue. That's one thing you could say about milk. If you could actually say it about espresso too, and the age of the coffee, that how that coffee is stored, and the age that it's supposed to be when it gets on the shelf in the hopper for espresso, writing the with paint marker or like a dry erase marker on the hopper or on a card, what's the roast date of that coffee? Tracking these things is really important to do so that you can actually communicate with your wholesale roaster or with the roaster in your company about something that happened with it, that it was tasting X, Y, and Z, and we don't know. This is part of it. So yes, sourcing great ingredients and maintaining them well in their on the shelf according to their freshest or appropriate freshness is a huge part of that. And that, buy yourself a label gun. What's really cool is having all sorts of labels on stuff. I was just over at Beehive Cafe and Roastery in Burlington, Connecticut. There are clients of mine getting actually ready at the recording of this to open tomorrow. But one thing that I saw that Steph, one of the owners, did is having this label gun or this label printer. That thing, she's getting her money worth for it. Labels are everywhere. Not like, egregiously, so it looks kind of cheesy, but behind the bar, when we say like, this is a milk towel, this is a counter towel, and here's where they're stacked, or in the fridge, here's where the alternative milk is, and here's where this, that, and the other. That is very helpful. And eventually, do you think the staff are going to need that? No, because it gets to be second nature. But this is a new shop. We need that kind of thing. And you should feel the freedom to readjust it if you find it doesn't make sense, which we did many times. Okay, I find myself reaching more here than there. That's going to be a workflow issue, but it's also quality control, because I know I can have confidence because I've invested in how that stuff is stored, the freshness, the parameters of coffee, for example. And quality control with ordering too is a huge thing. If your managers are not taking tabs of how much retail coffee needs to be reabsorbed into the system from the shelves, for example, if you've got 5 12-ounce bags of Brazil on the shelf, they're about to expire past, let's say, like a 2 week threshold of freshness, then you don't want to serve the customer this coffee particular, because of that age. Then we should be training people to pull those coffees, but not over order Brazil, because if you didn't factor in that you were going to have to use this inventory and you just ordered your normal amount of Brazil, well, now all things being equal, if there isn't a run on this particular single origin, then you're going to have too much coffee, and the coffee is going to get older than maybe we want it to, right? So all of the ways that we interact with the product, we've got to be thinking, how are we setting this product up and the people who create and realize the potential of this product? How are we setting them up for success in the way we procure it, store it, use it, and then dial it in and maintain it and present it to the customer? This is all part of it. So we've kind of been all over the place with this, but this is just a primer on and some principles in areas of quality control that we need to be figuring out in the cafe constantly. And it's not so easy as saying, well, I took from Chris's podcast at Keys to the Shop that I should be doing these things, and I'm just going to plug that in. And it's a conversation between you and the cafe. It's a conversation between you and the espresso and the milk and the coffee and whatever it is, like even down to the sparkling water that you gave somebody what you thought was sparkling water, and it turns out that it was half opened for the last 3 days and it's not fizzy anymore. How did we let that happen? What is the quality control standard for even the most basic of things? Like when people serve me espresso with water on the side, I always, first of all, make sure I head it off at the pass. I'm like, I just want the demi-tasse cup. If it comes on a little saucer, that's fine. No trays. I don't want a tray, right? I feel like I'm in high school. Nothing against all of y'all with the fancy trays, okay? Back in competition days, we used to call it they call them planks because everyone all of a sudden started serving things on planks. But I always get served with these Gibraltar cups, like the glasses that were sitting on the espresso machine. So you've got this cold water and a still hot glass cup and your espresso, and it's just got flicks of coffee everywhere, and it's just kind of sticky, and some of the finish on the tray has started to chip off. This is the presentation part, right? That I'm kind of veering into. Presentation is a quality control issue as well. Aesthetics are important. And in line with everything we just talked about, we're talking about aesthetics appropriately kind of last, because why make something that doesn't taste good look pretty? This is the bane of the latte artist's existence, is you're going to make that thing look so good, but it might not taste very good. And I would say that almost every design that you see poured in some of the higher level competitions, the ability to do that design, some of the more highly intricate and like wing 17 different tulip layers, etc., with a dragon on top, is relying upon a milk that, and sometimes an espresso, that does not even really taste good. It's just there for aesthetics, like a chocolate sculpture in a competition, or candy sculpture, or sugar sculpture. So we're focusing quality on what do we want our brand to be represented by in the cup. Do we know how we want a mocha to taste? Do we know how we want a sugar-free vanilla latte with 2% milk to taste? Have you tasted your menu? When was the last time you tasted all of your menu items according to the standards that you have right now? Not many of us do it because we don't drink that, but our customers drink it. And that, if you get anything from this today, go take an inventory of, with no judgment, don't jump behind the bar and be like, how could this be? It doesn't taste the way I had imagined. It's happening because we allowed it to happen. We're not going to jump to any kind of action right now. We need to take inventory of it. So we know what quality control measures need to be taken. So at first we're going to say, okay, we set up these recipes because we did think that these would taste good. Hopefully that's the way you did it. And you didn't just say, well, a mocha has 1 ounce of chocolate sauce in it at 12 ounces. And so at 16 ounces, let's just do like an ounce and a half, right? Let's say that. And we didn't taste it. We just thought it makes sense in our head. And frankly, we have lots of things to do, so who cares? But thousands of dollars later, in the life of an average customer who buys a mocha multiple times per week throughout the year, that person's experience of your oversight of how much you put in there without tasting it to actually think this is what we want. Yes, I affirm this flavor. That person's going to be less happy. And we don't want people to be less happy. We want to try to make them consistently happy that they have given us money. I mean, that's the basic thing here. Let's make people happy that they spent money. It's so simple, but it takes all of this sort of energy of quality control across all factors that could affect the experience of a customer, which is ultimately the test. Every customer is a judge. They will judge for you whether or not your 2% sugar-free vanilla latte with 1 extra shot of espresso in it is the drink that they will buy every single day, because that's what they drink. If you can't bear to drink that drink or sip it and cup it, forget about cupping for a second. Slurp some lattes, okay? Just go and have some derivations of matcha that people have come up with, and reserve judgment on whether or not it's your favorite, and maybe even pull your customers to say, like, what do you love about this? Like, oh, I see you order this drink all the time. What are the things that you love about that drink? Okay, that's the target. Your vision of what the ideal flavor of your menu items are and the combinations that they can be put into. And then it's also the customers voting by saying, we really like this. And you say, what do you like about it? I'm really interested in being curious. And now the system that you set up for quality control can adjust its parameters and create standards, SOPs, contingencies, troubleshooting, schedules of maintenance, and keeping eyes and minds engaged in what's happening behind the bar to create that over the bar experience. It starts to take shape to higher and higher levels of effectiveness. So I'm going to end here just by saying quality control is very important for all the reasons we just stated. It's the espresso, the milk, the coffee, all of the accompanying ingredients, the cleanliness and the aesthetic and the presentation, the tactile response, all of that stuff matters. And how we organize our energy and create systems to control that will determine whether or not the customer sees us as a place they want to continue to go to and invest into, which is what we want, right? So that is it for today, everybody. Honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of structure to the way we're presenting this topic today. So hopefully this was something that helped you and is, helpful for your team as well. Because ultimately, I want to remind you, if you're an authority of any kind, your authority is not for you per se. It's a tool to use for other people's benefit, customers and staff, and equipping them for success. So let's start there and make quality control a real substantive part and process in the cafe that comes from our desire to give great hospitality to our guests. So thanks, everybody. Now, if you have any questions about this, if you want to talk any more with me, you could just DM on Instagram at Keys to the Shop. If you're interested in coaching and consulting, if you need training or just a trusted advisor and somebody who can guide you to help you improve the condition of your culture, people, quality, and operations, then give me a shout. Just reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com. And so that's it, everybody. Thanks so much. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.